Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast, hosted by yours truly, David Lee, aka D Lee 43. This particular episode is more of like an off-season primer. This particular idea I've heard throughout the off-season, but I was reminded of it when I listened to Sam Vecini's off-season preview for the Hawks, which, by the way, one of the best national media perspectives on the Hawks. I will link it down below. Highly recommend you watch it. In it, he mentioned how the Hawks trade exceptions from the DeJounte Murray trade, the Bogdan Bogdanovich trade, and to a lesser extent the AJ Griffin trade could be used to absorb some bad money from other teams and bring in some rotation level talent that could really make an impact for a Hawks team because we are about $45 million away from the first apron. So we can provide some cap release to some teams. So with that in mind, I brought on my guy, Tyler. We talked through a number of different scenarios with a number of different types of players, from bigs, guards, wings, older guys. And yeah, we'd definitely love to get you all's thoughts after you listen to the episode on the options we discussed, if there's any we missed. And yeah, we'll definitely hope you all enjoy. And also look out in the morning. There'll be a part 2 to this conversation focused on the survey that I dropped earlier this week. Again, hope you all enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. I really want to talk to you about the offseason in a different facet. And what we're going to run through is the trade exceptions. The Hawks are in a very unique position for a team with their draft capital. And basically, the Hawks could take on a lot of bad salary. And when I say bad salary, I mean big deals for teams that need to relieve themselves from cap issues, right? So the Hawks with the DeAndre Hunter trade and to an extent the Bogey trade, they've cleared a lot of room. Now you will have to get the Dyson Daniels extension, but that won't be effective until next season, I believe.
Yeah.
So we're about 45 million below the first apron, which is all the way up here. And the Hawks have a number of trade exceptions. So we have, just to show y'all real quick. And also, we're kind of, Tony hasn't always used these, but the Jonte's trade exception expires July 6th. That's a $25 million trade exception. If you're not familiar with a trade exception, basically you can absorb a player's contract without matching the money with the other team. And so the Hawks could take on a bad contract, maybe with some draft capital, and basically shore up their bench because we need some NBA players, maybe some shot creation, maybe some big man depth at a pretty big discount, as opposed to like having to give up some consequential players. So, there will be some salary filler for sure, but it means you don't necessarily, you're doing a favor for another team. So I have a number of teams that come to mind for me. I first heard this on Sam Vecini's show, which, by the way, great offseason preview from someone who's like a national media member. And he pointed out LA. So LA is they need to be active on the free agency market. They need a big, and you see they're pretty close to the first apron when they figure out these extensions. I think if it was going to be LA, they probably would be willing to give us Rui, is who I expect, and probably like Gabe Vincent or Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt. How intrigued would you be with that? With that, because the other thing is the Hawks should be looking for short-term contracts too. Like Rui and Gabe are on 1-year deals. So like technically, like of course we'd have to send something back, but this is just to show what the trade exceptions can be used to do. You can take back these guys and not send LA anything. But it could be Terrence Mann, it could be Niang, whatever it may be. But that's the power of the trade exception. You can acquire these guys, give the Lakers cap relief, and then there'd be picks or whatever. If it was LA, now this isn't my favorite team to try to do this with it. If it was LA, what combo of like Vanderbilt, Gabe, and Rui do you think would be most conducive for the Hawks?
It would have to be Gabe and Rui just because they're on 1-year deals, though. I don't like it. I think I get this ultimately depends on how you feel about Rui Hachimura as a player. And I think he's good in certain situations. And I think in certain ways he would help the Hawks because one, he'd be Jalen Johnson insurance, which
100%,
that would be valuable, but also he would provide a level of play finishing that the Hawks are severely lacking. At the same time, he's not the greatest processor and his defense is trash. And so it's just like, I feel like with that 25 mil, I can get a better basketball player. But we can, that's one of those where it depends on what the Lakers don't have to give up a pick. Like they're going to have to give up something of value for the Hawks to do this favor for them. Both for Rui and for Gabe as well, who Like, unfortunately, I think Gabe's had some like knee problems the last couple of years. It's just kind of taken what he is as a player, useful player, but like he's honestly not the type of backup point guard the Hawks should be looking at, because that's not what they need. They need shot creation, and Gabe does not provide that. So I'm kind of no on both, and like, unless like the player I would want is Dorian Finney-Smith, but that's happening, of course. Jared Vanderbilt would be a good gamble, but it's just 3 years. Like if Jared was on a 1 year deal like Rui, I'd take him absolutely, just because. And honestly, if we didn't have the injury concerns with Jared, I'd have no problem, because he's like a truly game changer defender. But I can't trust his health. You can't trust his health in 3 years. Like, that's just too long in this where I don't want to tie myself to that level of player for that long with his injury.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I think this would be, they don't have a ton of pick equity also too, so it's like maybe they throw the second in. But it would be a negative in terms of player value, I think. The other team, I've got a number of them for us to go through. Toronto is a really weird team. Their books are stacked, man. Once they traded for Brandon Ingram and they immediately re-signed him, I was like, Jesus. They've got an insane amount of cap in these 4 guys. So RJ, Brandon Ingram, Quickly, and Scotty Barnes. You're basically at the cap floor with 4 guys. Jakob Poeltl is their other big guaranteed deal. Jakob is on a 1 year deal. He's got a player option. They've got a bunch of cheap salary. Looking at this roster, Jakob is definitely the guy I would love.
Absolutely.
Right? I think for them, they're not making this trade unless they have another, like, they don't have another center on the roster, to be completely honest. So like, they're not doing this without getting a center who can play minutes for them. And I don't think the Hawks want to fulfill that. It would probably cost you on Jakob. Maybe you can sign and trade Capella there. I don't see Masai doing that. I wonder, is RJ like I would be interested in RJ, but only because, like, well, here's the problem with him too. Like, he's on a 2 year deal. I don't like him as a player, but I could see his value for the Hawks as a straight line driver. He'd have to come off the bench, which then it's like, okay, do you need Karis? I would still want Levert, and then it's like, it gets complicated. So I think Toronto, Jakob would be awesome, but then it's just like, I don't really know how you can make that work, just because there's no young, unless they're trading back to draft a big, but then it's like, they just went and got Brandon Ingram and paid him a lot of money. I'm pretty sure they don't want to worry about like a big development. So it's a little bit murkier. It might take a 3-team deal, but they're going to have to get off some money, because this is not going to work for what's their ceiling, like 7th in the East, maybe. This isn't going to work. They're going to have to relieve cap somehow. It will be one of RJ or Jakob. That's why you're seeing RJ in trade combos. But I assume, we talked a little bit before, like, Poeltl would be a great get, but do you think it's possible? Like, I don't know.
I think it'll depend on what the Raptors, because like, Poeltl's sneakily not a great fit on this team either,
Yeah.
So it's just tough to understand what the Raptors are trying to do. They got a lot of guys, are making a lot of money, and they don't necessarily fit together. So RJ is such an interesting guy, because the Hawks absolutely need somebody who can get to point A to point B to the rim. And like, for all of RJ Barrett's flaws, the man can do that. Like, he's basically power forward. I mean, he's basically shooting guard Julius Randle at that.
Yeah.
But like, he's also Julius Randle in that the defense is trash. And though he played, like, it's not that he doesn't play hard. He's just not a good defender. Like, defense isn't just about playing hard. It's about talent. And I just don't, he's just not a talented defender. And then on offense, like, he's not the best processor, but like, he would help the Hawks. The Raptors would have to send some picks. That would be something that, if you're trading up for Coleman Malawak, I could see something whether RJ Barrett is involved in the deal. Like I could see some machinations where it's 13-22 for 9 RJ Barrett, and then the Hawks send some corresponding salary. Like maybe I don't know who the Hawks would send back that the Raptors would want to make the salary match work, because unfortunately he makes a little bit too much money to fit the trade exception.
Yeah.
You'd have to think about it, right? Like that's something you would absolutely have to think about. It's not the perfect fit, but the Hawks shouldn't be in position to be perfect fit anymore. They need more talent. And like RJ would definitely help this team, and he'd make life a lot easier for Trey. And I mean, he'd just take a lot of pressure off of guys to score. So that's just something the Hawks need to keep in the back of their minds. And I'm pretty sure they're probably in these conversations right now, considering, machinations. So I wouldn't be mad at it. But it's not the perfect fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now the team that I'm very interested in, that I think makes the most sense for the Hawks, is Orlando. Orlando is in trouble. They're already at the first apron, and this is before they bring back Mo Wagner. I think they declined Gary Harris's team option and Corey Joseph, if I remember correctly. They're going to probably renegotiate both of those guys, but it's very similar, although these players are of higher caliber, in my opinion, and it makes more sense for them. You've got 75% of the cap in Franz, or 70% in Suggs, Bane, and Franz. Paolo's extension will come this summer. With that being said, there are guys on here that I if I'm the Hawks, I'm calling immediately. Goga Batadze immediately makes a ton of sense for the Hawks as that backup big man behind Onyeka. He's a bruiser, can finish above the rim, a great defender. And then Jonathan Isaac too. Those are guys that I'd also be interested in. Now, I think the thing about Orlando is how willing are they to go away from like their identity, right? Like we're talking about a team that's like very defense first. And the Hawks don't really have a defensive piece to send back to them, right? Like, so if you're trading away Jonathan Isaac and or Goga Batadze, I would assume, let's say it's just Goga. And, the Hawks want to send back, they could do this. And again, it takes some salary or like, something to like sweeten it, but they can take him directly to the trade exception. They could take Jonathan Isaac directly to the trade exception. I don't know if is this a Niang team? Do they feel like they need shooting that much? I don't know. It's debatable.
The Hawks need shooting. Like they trade Niang, then they got to figure out what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, they'd have to be a complimentary move as well. Is there a preference for you between Goga and Jonathan? I think I personally would want Goga over him.
I'd want Goga. Would I give up 22 for Goga though? Is the question. I would consider it just because you show up the backup center position and you wouldn't have to think about it. And he's cheap. Like he makes no money. That's why you'd have to give up 22. Isaac is interesting. Like, can you ever trust that man to really be healthy? I understand he's been healthy the last couple of years, but the Magic go out of their way to protect him physically. I don't know if I can, even at his salary, I don't know. The Magic would have to give up some pick value, and they've already given up 8 billion picks to get Desmond Bane. So I don't know if it's going to be Isaac. I would be much more interested in Goga just overall, because they don't have a Goga on the team. Like, and they need one. They need a big bodied center who can finish above the rim on offense, while defensively, protect the circle. So that's something where if it's for 22, you got to consider, because I think Goga's he's undervalued in the league. I don't think people realize how good he was.
Yeah.
He's been these last couple of years. He plays on a Magic team that has no spacing either. So like I think on the Hawks, with the spacing that they have, he could be a really like complementary piece to what Okongwu does. And now you're really throwing out, you can actually do the 48-minute gimmick with him and Okongwu, where it's like 48 minutes or like, oh, we're beating you this way, and then we're beating you a different way as well. And how you gonna match up to us on a night-night basis? So Goga for 22, like I would consider it. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. The next team, and this will be like the last like big / forward team. Then we'll look at some of the guard options. I think, and I mentioned this to you earlier off the call. I feel like Dallas is sneakily having a positional issue, and some of that is because they traded away Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin. And if Grimes was on, which is a ridiculous deal at the time, but if Grimes is still on this team, then I feel better about their guard situation. Not enough that I wouldn't make a move, but just like I think they're in a serious issue right now because you've got so many wings and bigs. You've got guys like Klay Thompson. You got guys like, and I think Max Christie will help them a little bit too, but like they don't have enough shot creation and they also don't have enough guard depth. And where I think the Hawks could swoop in is someone like a PJ Washington. PJ Washington is on a very good deal for his production. And if we think about where Cooper Flagg's going to slot in with this team, he's going to be probably playing 30 minutes a night on the wing, and he's going to be starting. And it's like, okay, are you going to start? Are you really going to go double big with Flagg at the 3 and then PJ at the 2, or is it Klay at the 2? Or like there's some lineup stuff that I think the Hawks could like take advantage of because there's another guy that I really like on Dallas, which is Najee Marshall, and their deal is like Najee Marshall's making $9 million for 2 years. PJ's on a $14 million deal, but he's got a 1-year deal. Again, these are guys that we could directly take into the trade exception, but they've both got I would say PJ definitely has positive trade value, so it would come at a price. Najee, he also probably has positive trade value. Do you have a preference between those two guys? And,
listen, I didn't realize this about Dallas, but if you can get PJ Washington for the 22nd overall pick, you do that in a heartbeat. I'm doing that. I'm doing that today. Like, that's just a call I'm making. If they got to shed salary, PJ Washington doesn't fit their team, Hawks need to call him up because he can play the 4 and the 5. Yeah. And he's like, unfortunately, that means Nance's not going to be on the team next year. Great vet, love you. PJ Washington's just a better basketball player. And like he'll be that, he'll solidify the third big role that the Hawks have kind of been struggling with since elevating Jalen Johnson to the starting spot, but then losing John Collins. Like they haven't really had like a real third center that they can trust. There's been a lot of guys who have been playing that position, but who can't swing between 4 and 5. And like you get a PJ Washington, now you got Mo. You reduce your reliance on Mo Gabe while also being able to play Mo, I think, a bit more. You get to play Niang at the 3 a bit more. That's something that has to be considered if it's on the table. I don't know if I'm Dallas. If I were Dallas, I tried to hold on to PJ and try to get rid of either and try to get rid of one of their centers. So it'd be
would you consider Gafford?
Yeah. I just because I don't think you can play Gafford and Davis together the way you can play Davis and Lively together. And so it's like Gafford's value is a little bit reduced now on their team. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, if I'm I think if I'm Dallas, I'm like, I'm trying to get rid of Gafford first because PJ has that lineup versatility. And like his shooting is just so valuable as a bigger body player. Najee Marshall, again, like if I were the Mavericks, he's on too good of a contract to be given up for what he provides. Gafford is probably the guy I would try to swing if I were them. I'd take him on the Hawks. He's a good player overall, but he has his it's just weird that he's not a better basketball player, if that makes sense. It's like he should be Clint Capella, like pre-heel injuries, but he's not. He's never shown that level of dominance on either end of the floor the way Capella did. But he is a good player, and like he would be a great backup for Okongwu, and like he would give that vertical spacing that the Hawks have lacked since John Collins and Capella are both basically either not been on a team or it just hasn't been that type of that.
Agreed. And to your point too, I just wanted to visualize what you were saying. Big difference between Davis playing with Lively. They were a plus 11. Tiny minute sample for sure, but like for Lively's career, he's been a better and more impactful player than
David. We saw when the Hawks had to play the Mavericks. Yeah, those Lively Davis lineups, I was like, oh shit, this is a problem. Hawks have no answer for this. And like we were basically that entire game was like, Well, hopefully one of them either gets hurt or they're on a minutes limit, and we can try to win the game that way. Because those two together is a real weapon for the Mavericks. And if I were the Mavericks, I'd be like, we're investing heavy in this, since we traded, the life of our lives. We got to adjust. This might do something for us.
Yeah. The next team, New Orleans, again, they're just not good enough to be paying this much money. You've got a lot of money tied up and also the fact that they traded for DeJounte Murray makes CJ McCollum a little duplicative. He's making 20% of the clap. I see you shaking your head. This is a team where if the Hawks are like, we want a backup point guard, we want someone to run the offense when Trey's off the floor, I don't think you can do better in terms of like, now this one would be a little more complicated. You'd have to probably send Niang, Man, and I think even then, like there's still some cap machinations you got to make work, or that works. He doesn't fit in the trade exception. So I can't remember if you can aggregate TPEs.
You can't.
You can't, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So
this one, you're not using the TPE, but you are giving them cap flexibility, and you're getting off Terrence Mann's contract. Now, he's on a 1-year deal, and he's making $30 million. And so it's like, this is a trade that would be pretty risky. I don't think you can get a better offensively minded backup point guard, though.
Absolutely.
And if that is their goal, then this should be the deal. Because again, if you look at New Orleans cap sheet, yes, you end up getting Mann's long-term money of 15, but Niang's off the books in 1 year. And you probably still want playable guys around Zion and Trey Murphy or Herb Jones, whoever they end up keeping, because I can't really tell if they're selling everyone or not. But you want those playable guys whenever you bring in a rookie too, because I think they're going to move up to 3, and they're going to try and take whoever they think is highest at 3. What are your thoughts on CJ?
He makes even with this, I think he makes a little too much money because I'm losing Niang. Now I got to find a Niang replacement. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, I don't think the Hawks have the matching salary to make this work, even though I do in a vacuum. I think there's a better basketball player for this that were on the guards. But like, this is an okay deal in a vacuum. The problem is, where is the shooting if you're trading Niang? That's where I want to get in the mind of Hawks fans, just in general, being understanding that this is a perfectly fine trade. Like, this is a good trade for the Hawks. They're getting a much more talented player, and like CJ McCollum will absolutely feel a need if his coach would play him optimally, which is coming off the bench, playing small amounts of minutes next to Trey. But the era of CJ playing 35 minutes a night, that's over, especially in Atlanta. So like, that's just wouldn't be happening. So that's where the coach got to optimize him as the third guard. I think that honestly, that might mean if you're doing this, is Karras back on the team? Is there like some duplicative nature with Karras and CJ? Just because of how much money CJ makes, like I think he might complicate things in more ways than we think. But like, I don't hate it. I just think there are better backup guard options on the table for what the Hawks are actually looking for. Because I think CJ might be a little too good for the role that's going to be available to him, if that makes sense. Like, and like, is he going to be okay playing 25 minutes tonight?
So what's I'll give you one more team, and then I want to hear your thoughts on like who you think will be better. This team doesn't necessarily have cap issues, but they do have they've got a timeline thing. It's Washington. Chris Middleton, his ankles, I don't know if they're falling off the bone. I don't know what's going on, but he's the type of player that can still be impactful for the Hawks, in my opinion. Marcus Smart as well. Chris would not fit into the TPE. Marcus would. Marcus is on a $21 million deal for 1 year. That's kind of like what's drawing me to him.
This is who I would prefer over CJ. If
this who you prefer?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Just because he, while he's not the creator that CJ is, just the way, even still, like, I was watching a couple of Wizards games, like he still plays his butt off on defense, and like you can play him with Trey, without Trey, he'll keep the trains on the tracks as an offensive player. for what he is. I think he add a level of toughness and physicality to this team overall too. So like I think if it's just TPE and like some seconds, sign me up. Because I'm still a fan of his game. Chris, again, he just makes too much money. And when you make it 34 mil, then it's like, okay, we're giving up Niang. I'm like, all right, we're going to give up our best shooter, and we're getting Chris Middleton in return, who we can't trust to stay healthy. That's just too risky for where the Hawks are right now. So that's like smart, absolutely. But Middleton, not this year. But if he were to decline his player option, he would be somebody the Hawks might want to consider, either with the mid-level or the mid-level. But I don't see him doing that.
Okay. Is there anyone else, any other teams you were looking at? These are the teams I understand.
Colin Sexton with the Utah Jazz. I think you want to talk about like somebody who is begging to play on a good team. Like Sexton has turned himself into a really good basketball player. And he's clearly been the best guard for the Jazz for the last couple seasons, but they're playing mind games, trying to win, lottery picks. I think for him, for the 22nd overall pick, and I never have to worry about backup point guard again. Like to me, it's like it's the DeJounte Murray redux without giving up 18 billion first for a guy who was a backup point guard. Like you're giving up 22nd in a flat draft for a basketball player who will help your team win some games, because like he will be a difference maker on offense when Trey's off the floor, and also he can probably play some. Like Collins is a type of player who can play some next to Trey, depending on the team they're going up against, and like you could really take some pressure off of Trey Young as a creator. Like that's somebody where I'm like, if we're trading for a CJ McCollum type, I'm going for Collins, who's younger and I think just a better basketball player than what CJ is now. So that's why I'm interested in it. And if all it takes is 22, I don't think Colin has that much equity around the league, just because I don't think teams see him as a starter. But you put him in the Jamal Crawford role for the Hawks, like I think, or Lou Williams to be more exact. Like I think that could be a real boon for the Hawks. Lou's really underappreciated for what he brought to that Hawks team when they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. He shored up the backup point guard minutes, and he also like helped Trey so much when they were on the floor together. Even though him and Trey defensively, you wouldn't think would work, but like again, Capella had a hell of a season that year. That's the other side. But like Collins is the type of player that I'm looking at, where I'm like, yeah, let's go more so than Jordan Clarkson. I know Clarkson got more equity in the league. He's just not as good as, to me, Collins is just a better basketball player.
For sure. If they say no, but we'll do Clarkson for a second, do you think about it?
Yeah, have to. Even with his deficiencies as a basketball player, like this team, I said have to, and then I remembered there are some guys I like in free agency a little bit more than Jordan Clarkson. So that's something you can wait on, right? Where it's like if you're all out of options and you need to get somebody, then get Clarkson. Absolutely. But like I'm trying to play some Ty Jerome games, some there's some other options in free agency the Hawks can look at more so than Jordan Clarkson. Like that, Jordan Clarkson's going to be there. I think Colin Sexton is somebody the Hawks should be looking at the pounce on, because like it's so bizarre. He's playing the best, like Colin's playing the best basketball of his career, but legitimately, like he's not allowed to play more than 30 minutes a night because he was helping them win too many games. And like that would drive me up a wall if I was a basketball player in the prime of my career, trying to get my third contract. Like they've completely tanked his value. Because I don't think teams value him as a first round, somebody you spend a first rounder on. But I would, like particularly in this draft, if all it takes is 20, I don't know if the Jazz are interested in that though. And they're not looking to shed money. And they, quite frankly, if they're trying to win games, they need Colin Sexton. They don't have a better basketball player, at that position right now. So that's where it's like it's probably not going to happen. But like that's somebody I'm looking at if I'm looking for a backup point guard.
I think OKC might call them too. But what would you say to Bradley Beal?
Because you know what, they had interest in him at the deadline.
That's why I brought it up.
A couple reports, and is he willing to come off the bench? You know, that's the question, because he's not as I don't think Bradley Beal's a starter caliber player for a good team anymore.
Yeah,
I think he's but does he know that? And the reason why that matters is because he has no trade clause, and you know he can nullify any trade, and so all it would cost is like talent wise, that's somebody I'd be comfortable giving up, you know, Niang to match salary. Like I wouldn't care. Just because even with all his deficiency, he can still self-create for himself. Like still, and he has the size to play alongside Trae Young. So like, but he's just not a starter anymore in this league. Like it'd probably take like a sign and trade with Clint Capella as well to really get the deal done for Bradley Beal. But that's something where they'd have to convince him to come off the bench and be a 25, 28 minute per game guy. Harris won't be on the team anymore, almost certainly, but like, that's a real talent upgrade, and he's still good when he plays. It's just, man, he was like that Suns teams. I think you've talked about it. A lot of people talk about their vibes was so crap, and so and like Beal is a known like. Does Beal still have that dog in him? Like real, because like if we want to move back a little bit, look how the playoffs are shaping out. It's the teams that are playing the hardest that are winning. Like, you gotta play hard all the time to win games now, and playing hard is a young man's game. And like Beal, I don't know if he got that in him anymore, because like the Hawks, like they need more guys to play. Like they need more athletes. They need more shot creation. I understand that, but like if we're playing Bradley Beal $50+ million and like he's not happy, you know, in his role, is he going to pout like he did with the Suns this year?
Probably.
Then I'm like, hell no. I'll find some G leaguer, right, to be better than this.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with Beal. Like, respect to him, you know, bag Hall of Famer, but it would depend on his attitude. Like he'd have to do a 180 as a player and as a person. And I don't think he would.
Yeah, one of my friends is a Wizards fan, and he doesn't speak highly of him. I think Boston's probably not going to dump guys, and their guys are pretty big in terms of salary too. So, but a team that was floated, Denver has Zeke Nnaji on a $8 million contract. The Hawks have 2 trade exceptions, so we also have the bogey one, which is $13 million. They could take someone like Zeke Nnaji in. Zeke Nnaji, I don't think he's a good player, but you know, if let's say Larry moves on, and now he's like the 4th or 3rd big, but he's also like insurance for Muhammad Gay, and that's or whatever it may be. Like I could maybe see them doing that if Denver gives them. I think Denver would need to give up draft capital though. Like
absolutely,
he's not worth just taking on, and of course they only have first. So he is that bad that I think it would take a first though. Like if they wanted to get off his contract, it would cost a first.
Yeah, I'm not doing. So I'm not doing a favor for Zeke Nnaji.
And then I think that's really like the only other teams. I think I don't think Golden State, maybe LA has some guys, but I don't really know what they're planning to do. I wouldn't want Norman Powell, and I don't think he's a salary dump type of guy either. You'd have to give up assets for him.
He's not.
That's what I think. Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at though. Like the Hawks are in a really good position to add real NBA talent, whether it's via the drafts, whether it's via free agency, but they have to. This cannot be a trade exception you just let expire, in my opinion, because there's going to be so many teams wheeling and dealing that they're going to need some cap relief. And outside of Brooklyn, we are like probably one of the best options to relieve that cap because we can take in salary without sending it back. And I think of the options we presented, I like the Colin Sexton one. I didn't think about that. I think I'm looking at Dallas like hungry though. I'm not gonna lie. Like
yeah,
Dallas is like Dallas is the team where I'm like, let me know. I can change your life. That's what I'm trying to sell them. I'm like,
by the way, it wouldn't take a first for Gafford because I don't think he's that level of player. Like I think it takes some seconds, but like be like, hey, 14 million off your books, and then you guys can look for that. Try to sign Ty Jerome in free agency, I guess, or something. They got to do something like guard. While Kyrie Irving is out. So that's probably what they're looking at doing and be like, hey, we'll help you out. We get, Gafford, shore up the backup center minutes. Now I don't have to worry about it. Again, it's on Quinn to understand that, Gafford's a less than 18 minute per game player, 22 to 18 minute. We're not playing no 25 minute split in time with a Okongwu. That era needs to be dead. But like, that is, Pete, but if they willing to give up PJ Washington for 22 plus some other stuff, I'd consider that definitely. So yeah, Dallas is probably the most realistic. Though the Lakers are probably like sure, because like
if you can't get anything else, you might as well. Like if you can't get nothing else,
Rui would help absolutely. Like full stop. It's just he's just not my favorite player. Like I just don't like the way he plays. He's very similar to DeAndre Hunter, so that's one
for sure. Well, appreciate you, Tyler. I know you mentioned the ATL 2.9 earlier, but please let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Blue Sky Anansi2x4. I'm still on Twitter, though not as much. I go on it for like an hour a day now. Yeah, and then podcast, me, Glenn Willis, Kevin Shenard. We do a podcast, ATL on 29. We're going through the prospects now, and it's a good exercise to go through a bunch of guys just to get my feelings, kind of see where it's at. And it's like we said, this is a very flat draft for where the Hawks are drafting. And so it's hard for us to be too – though I will say, if the Hawks draft Igor Demon, which is over Colin Murray-Boyles, which is what was mocked by Jonathan Gavoni, and then get Danny Wolf at 22, I'm going to have some problems. I'm going to have some problems, bro. Like, shout out to Alpharetta, but like that's a little bit too much.
That's a nightmare outcome, and
that's like, ooh, the Hawks might be not in good position. Organization.
If that would be, I would have serious concerns, and this team is pretty drastically in need of like size and athleticism and versatility, and those guys bring size, but they don't check those other boxes. And there's like some legitimate, I don't think they're like transcendent defensive talents, but like their frames are transcendent. And like I'm just gonna share this for the last thing before we hop off. I just put this tweet out because it's like, we all know that Hawks fans in general, we could be a little obsessive about 7-footers. This is an effective height calculation, basically saying like, what is the average wingspan for the height of an NBA player? And the average NBA player has a wingspan that's about 4 inches bigger than their height. Thomas Sorber is 6'9". I had a lot of Hawks fans tell me he's too small. His 7'6" wingspan gives an effective height of 7'1". Okay. And when you're smaller than your wingspan and your effective size, you're typically more versatile because you can move quicker, but you're not giving up size. And there's CMB is a great example. Like he plays about 3 inches taller. Cedric Coward is about 5 inches taller than his listed height because of his wingspan. Fleming is also about 4 or 5-ish inches taller. So like that's just 4 guys. And those are guys with like the other end of the spectrum, outliers, but those are guys who one of those may realistically be in the Hawks range. And I think at some point when you watch what OKC is doing, where they're playing small without giving up size, the Hawks cannot go in the opposite direction and get someone like a Danny Wolf, who, as interesting as he is offensively, he's turnover prone, his shooting is inconsistent. The volume is there, but the results aren't. And then he's also like, I'm very concerned about his mobility and his overall athleticism. And I don't even want to get into the Jaeger stuff because he makes me angry just to talk about him. But I'll say that for some of the more in-depth draft stuff coming up. Again, Tyler, thank you so much. Y'all make sure to go check him out everywhere he listed. It'll be in the description. Yeah, hope you all enjoyed and see you in the next one.